Hello and welcome to the Leading Lives podcast. Again, we're away from the login studio in Dorset. This time we're at the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. Now, what does it take to be a better leader or improve how your team works? How do you get the best out of your team when under the greatest stress of all? I'm sure that today's guest can offer some great insight. It's the wonderfully named Lieutenant Colonel Cliff Dare, MBE, RM. Cliff, thanks for joining us on the Leading Lives podcast. Let's have a start by looking at your early career away from the military. What did you start out doing?
Well, I think it'd be fair to say I was one of the very early adopters of a hybrid career. So I've worked in property, construction, development consultancy, as a chartered surveyor, as you've touched on, been a Royal Marine, played sport to a good standard and done a bit of TV presenting, all kind of together. So
yeah. A lot of that TV presenting alongside us, of course, over the years.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
So what made you choose the role of a chartered surveyor?
Well, simply to complete the set, really. My father's a chartered accountant, my brother's a solicitor, so we needed a chartered surveyor to sort of claim Yahtzee, really.
It's quite different being a Royal Marine, though, isn't it, as well? So why did you do that as well?
A good question, actually, and I think I kind of wanted the variety of what is now called a hybrid career, which really wasn't then, and the ability to sort of do a bit of everything and live a life less ordinary in the military and hopefully sort of earn some relatively good money, etc. in my civilian life.
Initially you were in the Marines full-time, as I might say, but now you're a reservist, and how does that differ?
Well, on paper it doesn't, and certainly the record of the reserves through the sort of Afghan and Iraq years is really very comparable with the regulars, and there's very little difference. I think what we have seen as there's less conflicts involving sort of boots on the ground at the moment, you've gone back to perhaps how things were in the Cold War, with there a sense that reservists are perhaps second-class citizens compared to regulars. That's very much one man's view, but you're only as good as the last operation you've done, and when you genuinely didn't know if the man or woman next to you in Afghanistan was a regular or reservist, then it obviously didn't make any difference.
If I can take you back a bit to when you were joining the Marines, and how did you cope with the rigours of training?
Well, I mean, the story I tell, which always makes me smile, is that when I joined, you're given your program for that term, a bit like school, and I thought, well, it's only X number of weeks until Christmas. By the end of the second day, I'm thinking if I could just get to stand easy, which is at a coffee break in the morning, I can have a load of toast and a chocolate bar and see if I can get through. So your horizons sort of shrunk to, can I survive? And I think the answer is I've got sheer sort of bloody mindedness. I'm a really determined person. My dad told one of my schoolmates he thought I'd be home by Christmas, and the only way I'd have been home by Christmas is if I was in a box.
Yeah, I mean, I've known you for a good few years, and I can certainly say that many people do call you bloody minded. So we can't argue with that one.
And many other things as well.
That's true as well. Looking at the training in specifics, what memories do you have of any particular events that went on? What were the hardest parts?
I think the sort of the public's perception of training in the Corps is, lots of shouting and, people being sort of thrashed, beasted, call it what you like.
Yeah.
The reality is subtly different in that, it's that continuous pursuit of excellence, and you always knew when you screwed up because you got remedial training, i.e. hard work with a weapon above your head or whatever, and there's a sense of disappointment that you let the training team down. So it was always fair. So you screwed up, and therefore there was a penalty you had to pay for that, which you kind of learned from. So that's a sort of strong thing I've carried through my life, in that you've got to be really fair with people and the way you deal with people, and really clear in outcomes that you expect. And I think that's part of a sort of broader ethos of the Corps, which sort of translates into my own ethos of leadership and to a degree management.
Describe the moment that you were awarded the infamous Green Beret.
Quite a long time ago now. I was 18, and it was just a sort
60
of sense
years.
Yeah, exactly. A sense of real sort of, like all achievements in life, it's never quite, as good as you think. I think.
Oh, come on.
The
You're
time
doing yourself down there.
Well,
That's,
it
it's
really,
a hell of an achievement.
it really is, and you knew that, but you were pretty well broken and really
Yeah.
knackered, and it sunk in. We actually got a helicopter to fly us back at the end of the 30 miler to Lympstone in Devon, where all Royal Marines train, and we landed, and I walked through the gate, and I got my first proper salute with a green beret on my head, and that's when it really kind of, sort of sunk home that I joined a club that is truly, genuinely exclusive. I mean, I describe the Royal Marines as sort of Britain's best grammar school, really. The lads don't really care who you vote for, the colour of your skin or who you sleep with. It's just, are you good enough to do the job? And it was quite special in fact, very special to join that club.
Yeah. And it's more than mindset, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an ethos, a set of values that you kind of live your life by, and you have a clear understanding of the worst thing you could do is let your mates down, and we all kind of are in it for each other, and for me that's very similar to business. I think the sort of the modern post-heroic leader actually is found most in the Royal Marines, where you have people who seek the advice and counsel of their team and choose a really good plan and let the team's excellence shine rather than themselves. So, going back to me saying about that the shouting and screaming and the follow me, that's very, very dated, and there's a time and a place for it, but it's not that often.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because you've worked alongside my team and my extended team for a number of years, and we try and follow a high standard ethic as well, and try and work very much as a team and try and follow your guidance as well, actually, and things we've learned from you. So how do you think it relates to us?
I'm really flattered that you say that. I mean, I think for me, there's a real read across between the two industries. I felt immediately at home. I mean, I knew you before I came to work with you, but I felt immediately at home. You've got a team of sort of seasoned market professionals, if you like, who kind of all rub along together. And it's a bit like the All Blacks rugby team, isn't it? The no dicks rule, right?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so
that's it.
everybody is there. There's a healthy respect, a really good work ethic, and everybody knows what they have to do.
Yeah. Now, just getting a bit more serious here, you've led your men into battle, knowing that some may not get out alive. How do you deal with the emotion of that?
Yeah, I mean, just sort of a general point in that, there's nothing worse than a veteran sort of standing there, sort of telling you about what in his or her day and what they did and what the others did. The military is like the biggest squash ladder in the world, in that you've got someone who's always, many people above you who've done many more gnarly things than I have. So, we all do what we can in the opportunities that present themselves to us. So, for me, I was really lucky in that I didn't lose anyone in either Iraq or Afghanistan, and I'd love to say that was due to inspired leadership. For me, it kind of was just luck. In Iraq, the helicopter that I should have been on with my team, we have an Excel spreadsheet called a heel to helicopter assault landing table, and we flew on edition 9, and in 7 or 8 of those, versions 1 to 7, my team was on the helicopter that crashed and killed a load of our friends. So, it is a bit of luck. How do you prepare yourself for it? Well, I thought, I'd read a lot. I think it really helped that I wasn't 18, I was in my 30s maybe even late 30s, early 40s in Iraq. And I think that gives you a sort of wider life perspective on matters. And, I knew that things were quite likely to get really difficult, and there's a good chance we would lead people and lose people. And I think you think it through and visualize it as best you can. But truthfully, to answer your question, I don't think you can prepare for that. And if I had lost someone, I'm sure my life would have turned out very differently.
Knowing you as I do in your life, dark humour must play a part as well.
One of the sort of key sort of commando spirit things in the core is cheerfulness in adversity, and the ability to laugh about I mean, recently retired Lieutenant General Charlie Stickland was the Chief of Staff of 3 Commander Brigade on one of the Afghan tours, and I was genuinely asked by Charlie, he was a lieutenant colonel then, I was a captain, I think maybe a major, to go to the airhead in Kandahar and take guys off planes where they thought they were flying back to UK for the end of their tour, to come back, get bombed up again and go and re-assault and take Sangin, because the Dutch General van Loen wanted us to do it. And I thought this is going to be quite difficult, and going to the lads, and they were saying things like, "Sir, if this was a war film, we'd definitely be about to die now, wouldn't we?" And I was like, "Yeah, you definitely would, mate." Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
And I suppose if this was a war film, it would sum up what they'd think of you as their senior officer as well.
Well, this is also true.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, if you've got to give a difficult order like that, the easy option would be just to say, well, that's an order. But to get more out of your team, how do you approach giving difficult instruction?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a direct read across into business as well,
Yeah.
because I've touched on it earlier in that the shouting and screaming
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. So if one of those lights is about to fall on your head and I could see it and warn you, of course I would shout at you, because it's a sort of instant thing that would be doing to save your life. But if you're trying to get people ultimately to young men and women to close with the enemy and potentially kill them, you need to have a really good plan, and there needs to be a really clear understanding of what you're trying to do. So it's exactly the same as business. So it's about getting a very early and collective buy-in to what have we been asked to do and how are we going to do it, and then everybody has a dog in that fight in that planning process. Now, of course, there comes a moment when we say, right, we're now stopping talking. Here is a set of orders that we're going to give, and this is the job we're going to do. But at that point, I'd like everybody to think, yeah, I know what my part in the plan is. There was an American general who used to walk around saying, "What's my intent?" And it's a bit of a cliche now, but it's a really good thing for business as well. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We manufacture widgets. We're trying to be a market leader in doing that. How are we going to do it? Does everybody know that? And so it's about really clear communication, getting people's buy-in, and having a good plan, and then have the courage to see it through.
In fact, I mean, away from the military, just working together this week here in Birmingham, you've seen that we've had to adapt with our plans, haven't we? And work together, each team member knowing what their role is. And when we've had a problem, it's been assigned to a particular team member to resolve it.
Yeah, adapt and overcome, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way to solve a problem, right?
I know that you have experience of trim. Tell me what that is and why it's important as well.
Well, it's one of the things I think that the Royal Marines are, quietly really proud of, in that we invented, if that's the right word, trauma risk management, which has now been adopted by Blue Light Services, the NHS, the rest of the military worldwide, I think, not just the UK. And it's about understanding that your mate, your oppo, as we would call it, knows you better than anybody else, and is able to see the presence of the abnormal or the absence of the normal in the way you are and the way you behave. And it's had some really good results in post-Afghan and Iraq, management of emerging PTSD. I also am vice chair of the Poppy Factory, which is a charity which is designed to put wounded, injured and sick veterans back to work in a civilian context. And a lot of the injuries are not visible, so they're people with complex, challenging sort of mental health conditions. Yeah. And trim and a broader awareness of mental health practices is a really important part of that.
You played a significant, and I was going to say major role in, but that's now beneath you, of course, a major role in the celebrations to commemorate Royal Marines 350. How proud were you of that role that you undertook, and what did you do?
I mean, that was a fantastic thing to be asked to do. 2014, 350 years of the Royal Marines. I was asked to run a sort of manifold program of events which lasted the whole year, and we did put a small team together, and we had Royal Marines on London duties guarding Buckingham Palace, which we hadn't done since 1986. We had I abseiled down the BT Tower with Bear Grylls and others, and a whole series of other events, which were absolutely fantastic. I mean, some of them are really quite sort of sobering in that we went ashore off a landing craft on the beaches of Normandy, following the exact route of 4-7 Commando on the 6th of June 2014. So, that period of really quite sober reflection about what our forebears did, and a sense that we really were sort of walking in the, standing on the shoulders of giants, I think, as they say.
Yeah, and one of the things that you did was the March through London, of course, and we got involved in that with you, if you remember.
Yeah, that's right. So the Royal Marines were formed at what is now the Honourable Artillery Company in just on the edge of the city, and part of our, we have the rights to march through the city of London with, I think, drums beating and fifes. Not that we know has a fife, I think, anymore, but and we did that, which was really exciting.
It was a hell of a spectacle, actually,
well,
that day. Yeah. You've also an MBE. How did that come about?
So I was really lucky enough to be given initially a really limited role on the Olympics, where I was putting together flag raisers and for medal ceremonies. And because perhaps I'm not the brightest, I was a bit like disenchanted with this. And the Royal Navy Commodore who put me in for this, I said, look, this is a bit of a boring job, this. And he said, you really are a silly boy. You don't know anything. You wait and see. This will grow. And sure enough, it grew arms and legs. And to give you some context, so we had live operational theatres in Iraq and Afghanistan at the same time, and we had what's known as the RIT, the Relief in Progress, where one group's tour of Afghanistan was finishing and another one. If you imagine, that's quite a complex thing. So all my colleagues down in Navy Command Headquarters were just not interested in helping at all with the Olympics. And I had a Royal Naval reservist whose partner worked for G4S, who came into my office and said, look, G4S are about to say they can't do this. David Cameron is going on the steps of number 10 to say the military will take over. It's coming to us. So I got my limited team of 4 people together, and I said, right, in a minute, the phones here are going to start glowing. Answer them and give whoever's ringing the impression this is a fully formed headquarters and Colonel Dare is just away from the desk and will call you back. And sure enough, I became the Maritime Support Commander for London, and we ended up running a big chunk of the Olympics.
So it could be true then that you were full of bullshit then, and you still are, eh?
Oh, this is absolutely undeniably true, yeah.
When you were awarded your MBE, it was Her Majesty?
It was really lucky. So I went with my children to Buckingham Palace, met our late Queen, which was an incredibly sort of sobering and a really privileged thing to do.
One of the key things in life every day is conflict management. How do you try and diffuse difficult situations, both inside and outside of your military life?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people on lots of podcasts and TED Talks give you really trite answers about management and leadership and everything else and how you do this. And the answer is sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes it's therefore it's having the battle at a place and time of your choosing.
Yeah.
But I think the vast majority of conflict situations can be avoided by really careful orchestration of whatever that issue is. What do I mean by that? Well, I was Chief Operating Officer at Harwell Campus. It was a public-private joint venture, 50-50 deadlock joint venture, and we had a mixed board of colleagues from the public sector and colleagues from the private sector, and a board meeting was not the time to have issues bubbling to the surface. And what I used to do was take people, after the papers had been issued, take people for a dog walk round the campus and explain where we were thinking and what the problems were, and try and tease out issues. Because nobody likes to be made to look a fool, even if that's not the case. They think they might be made to look a fool in a meeting. And I think a lot of sort of hostile and difficult conversations happen because they just haven't been managed properly.
Yeah.
But my first point, I think, is absolutely critical here, is sometimes they're going to happen, and you have to be really calm, as non-emotional about it as possible, and be really focused on outcomes, not people.
I've seen you do that. You probably won't remember this, but we were walking through the city of London, and there was this guy walking in the road, and he was giving a mouthful to a bus driver who almost knocked him over. And you said very calmly and quietly, "Look, mate, you just shouldn't be there in the road." And he turned around, and I think he wanted to punch you in the face. And then he saw the green beret, and it did make him stop. You remember that?
I don't, but one of the
senile,
one of the sort of afflictions of bootnecks as a whole is we run to trouble rather than away from it. So I suppose that's just another time of my mouth getting me in trouble again.
So how, in what other ways has your experience in the military helped you in your business and civilian life?
I think let's answer it even one level above that, right? So I'm 57 and I am undiagnosed with ADHD. Everybody who knows me says I have ADHD. And there are a lot of neurodiverse people in the military, and it has helped me enormously channel that for the greater good rather than spiraling down and it becoming a thing that is a disability. It's an ability for me, and so I don't think I would have been able to do that without the experiences of the Corps and the training and the people I work with, and seeing other people who are perhaps similarly neurodiverse who really succeed. So for me, that's a really important thing, and I think that's one of the reasons I happened on this hybrid career is that my flippity gibbet brain actually works a lot better if you give me 20 things to do rather than one. And so, to answer your specific question, in a civilian life, dealing with complex issues that are coming at me fast, I'm at my absolute best, and I've learned that from the military.
So now, who inspires you in life, and what or why?
That's a horrid question, really, because
that's why I'm here.
It's a sort of hot fuzz question of what's your favourite Sunday. My partner is a director of a global business, and our stepdaughter, her daughter, has cerebral palsy, and she looks after her and still holds down a better job than most people. That's pretty inspiring. But both my children inspire me in their own ways, and it's really lovely to see them sort of kicking on in their lives. I could wax lyrical about the sportsmen and women that really fire me up. But
I thought you were going to say me, Cliff. I genuinely thought you were going to say that.
Sorry to let you down. It's just one of those conflict situations I now have to manage. Right? Sometimes reality bites you on the arse when you least expect it, my friend.
Indeed.
Yeah.
What ambitions have you still got left to fulfil?
Well, I think they're not ambitions for me. I think they're ambitions probably for my family, really. I want to see my children really sort of, fly in their respective careers and sort of, and kick on. I would like to remain healthy and able to do the things I like doing for a lot longer. So, it's really interesting. And you and I have touched on this in the past. We're at an age where if we say stuff, sometimes people listen, and actually that's quite, if you say it's a gift, that sounds really trite, but I enjoy being able to kind of make a difference in the businesses I'm involved with, and give advice to to clients on the property side who listen. I have no time for the ones who don't, by the way. I don't mind if they don't take the advice, but I think it's good manners if they're paying me to listen, right? And, you know who you are if I'm,
I think you and I share an inability to suffer fools, don't we?
Yeah.
I think right. So I know what a determined, non-stop kind of character you are, and it's obvious to anybody watching this. But recently, you had a hip replacement, and I think what happened next summed you up.
Well, I've actually had two. You didn't know I had the second one, actually.
No.
So I saw Professor Sean Glyn Jones in Oxford, who's probably one of the best hip specialists, replaced the hip, and I said, when will I be able to ski? And this is in sort of final consultation in sort of late October, early November, prior to going under the knife. And he said, we should get you skiing next year. And I'm like, no, mate, you don't get it. I'm going at Christmas. And so,
You'd already booked it. hadn't you?
yeah, I've got a place out in France, and I was good. So 20 days after the operation, and I was pretty confident. He said, "Well, I imagine you're quite a good skier." And I said, "Well, yeah, I used to race a bit, and I'm here." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Look, what you must do is when you get on the flight on the way home, but not before, is please send me a film of you skiing." And I was like, "Yeah, fine." So we got to the car park on the first day, and it had poured with rain and frozen overnight. And I opened the door, and the whole car park was covered in green ice. And I said to my other half, "Might have a problem here," because walking in. So I walked with 2 ski poles and ski boots like a little old man onto the snow, put skis on, and then we were fine.
Well, I think that story sort of sums you up, really, doesn't it?
Really
But-
stupid, right?
Well, that too. But when the time comes, how would you like to be remembered, if anybody remembers you at all?
Well, I'm sure people won't, but a force for good, I think. Somebody who has a love of life. Both my children will. One of them is behind the camera there, and he will roll his eyes at this. In that, my mantra, which I've passed on to them, is "We suck the hind tit of life dry," and I'd like them to think that I have sucked the hind tit of life dry.
Thanks very much.
You're
Cliff.
most welcome. Lovely to see you.
Well, I can't believe the amount of subjects that we've covered in that time. We'll be back next week with more Leading Lives, so see you soon.